You know, Fox News attacking video games is kind of like Michael Jackson molesting little boys. You always seem to find you together, and no matter how much bitching you do about it, you can't seem to get the two apart. But anyway, enough with the jokes. Let's get on with this particular rant. So yeah, Fox News has done another news report about a certain video game. And what video game have they decided to rant about this time? Well, if you haven't read what's in the title up there, or the title down there, or wherever the hell the title might end up on this video in the future, they're basically complaining about a game called SimCity Societies. Now, I'm not that familiar with SimCity. I haven't really played any of it. I mean, I played some of the Sims, but I've never really played SimCity. And apparently there's something about this game that bothers them. Now, I'm wondering, and probably you're wondering as well, what could possibly be in a game like this that could bother Fox News? I mean, you know, at least the previous games they bitched about had something in it that they didn't like, that you would think, you would know that they would not like, for example, violence or sex or something like that. Like the last game they ranted about, that I also ranted about, was Bulletstorm, and they were talking about how they couldn't stand the fact that it was so violent and so sexual. But what could be in this game that could possibly be so bad as to wonder the ranting of Fox News? Well, to be quite honest, after watching the report, which is a pretty short report, it's about 3 minutes long, it's pretty stupid. In fact, this is going to be one of their dumbest reports. And it actually is more, after going through this report, it's more of not just Fox News, it's more Fox News' ignorance on video games and how the industry and the culture work, but it's also some of their plain bias against certain groups of people. But without any further delay, let's get into this, shall we?
Green police trying to reach your kids at home on the video game systems. In the SimCity Society games, kids have to build environmentally friendly towns or face a fine. That sounds like a good lesson. But is this promoting education or just a liberal agenda with what they actually have to purchase?
Okay, so their first thing about this game, and that's their main problem with it, is the fact that this game is somehow promoting a liberal agenda. Now, I'll talk about that more later in the rant because that's the main focus of this, but the part I wanted to talk about in this particular stopping of it was the fact that if you looked at the beginning of the report, you'll see they showed a video of two different games side by side. One of the games was a violent game, which was Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I'm pretty familiar with my Call of Duty, so I know it when I see it. And the other game on the right, I guess, was SimCity Societies. And I want to know, was there some sort of message that was supposed to be there? I mean, what was the point of showing a non-violent game next to a violent game? Especially since the game they're talking about isn't violent in general. Maybe if they were talking about a violent game saying, hey, you know, you think all games are like this? Well, here's some games that might shock you. Maybe if they were talking about violent games in general, there might be their reasoning. But I can't find a reason to why they're showing a violent game next to a violent game when they're not talking about a violent game. I don't know, it's just kind of weird. And the only thing I can think of is maybe they're trying to say, like, hey, if you think this game is something to worry about, check out this game. It's not even violent. I have a weird feeling that that's the message that they're trying to pull here. And I know this is kind of nitpicking, but, you know, with Fox News, you know, really, nitpicking is kind of a lot about Fox News. Of course, nitpicking is kind of what Fox News is known about. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Is they like to find the small things and make them seem like serious problems when they're not. But whatever. Continue.
Joining us now is radio host and parent T.J. McCormick. Nice to see you this morning, T.J.
And you, buddy.
So let's get into some specifics. You know, that sounds like a good lesson to be learned. Be environmentally friendly. We don't want people polluting.
Right.
But it's when you dive into the specifics of the game that it gets a little bit gray or not green.
Yeah, and when you use fear, you know, I think right off the top, you know, anytime I see a social cause that somebody's profiting off of, right away, credibility to me is in question. And yeah, you know, I think the scare tactics, the guilt involved, you know.
Well, let's be specific,
sure.
Because in this game, SimCity Societies, one specific thing is players choose alternative energy options like wind and solar and stuff for city infrastructure and soy farms and stuff instead of nuclear power.
Right, right, because nuclear power will inevitably make us all glow at night, and you know, meanwhile, it's arguably the safest form of energy out there, you know.
So basically, their complaint with this game, like I mentioned earlier, is the fact that it has somewhat of a liberal theme to it. Now, I really don't know a lot about liberals and a lot about conservatives. I mean, I know some things, but not enough that I can really create an opinion on. But I guess liberals are well known for, you know, bashing nuclear energy and using fear tactics to get people to use solar power and wind power, which is pretty wrong. Yeah, I mean, if liberals are doing it, then yeah, I got a problem with that. And apparently this game has similar themes in it. The game encourages you to use solar energy and wind energy, and if you try to use energies like nuclear energy, it somehow punishes you for it and creates and makes you think like that's the wrong choice or something like that. You heard the report, you heard what he said. I guess I don't really have to repeat a lot of that, but yeah, and I think because it has the theme of these are themes that seem to be based. The game's gameplay seems to have a liberal theme to it. I guess they think that it's promoting it. First of all, video games don't promote anything. All right. There's a lot of games out there that may have certain themes to them, but they don't promote anything. I mean, just because this game has may have a liberal theme to it, doesn't mean it's promoting it. I mean, a lot of people think that, Grand Theft Auto promotes, cop killing and hooker banging, and it doesn't. I mean, it may be a theme in the game, an optional theme, but it's not something that it promotes. For the game to promote it, it would mean that the designers are saying, here's this action you can do in the game, this is how you should behave in real life. No, it's not telling you that. It's basically saying, here's the theme of the game we're choosing, but we're not saying you should do it. Okay? And they're thinking, well, if it's this is basically the argument of, this is just part of the ignorance of Fox News saying, hey, if a game has something in it, it means it's promoting it. No, it may have a theme of it, but it may theme itself around this sort of liberal idea, which I don't see it. But it doesn't mean it's promoting it. Now, the next thing is that, Fox News is a conservative, biased news network, and they really don't like liberal things. They believe anything that liberals support is wrong and immoral, and so I guess they believe that anything that would have a liberal theme to it is also wrong and immoral, I guess. And, which is Fox News. I mean, Fox News is a conservative, biased news network, and anything that may be liberal, they think is wrong. But then again, I mean, it'd be kind of like, let's see, I had it on the tip of my tongue. MSNBC. MSNBC is considered the sort of opposite of Fox News. Where Fox News is considered conservative bias, MSNBC is considered liberal bias. So I bet you they would say anything negative. So they pretty much will say anything negative about conservatives or anything having to do with that may have a conservative theme to it. Would they do that? Sure. Fox News will bash liberal things, and MSNBC will bash conservative things. So this kind of goes both ways. So really, this is more of just the bias of the news network itself than it is just about this game in particular. So it's kind of like, I see a lot of bias in a lot of news networks. So it's nothing particularly new. Whatever. I'm really not upset about it because it's there. It happens often. But I want to give you an example. A good example about this. Another good example that I thought was really interesting. Conservatives are well known for bashing homosexuality and using fear tactics to get people to agree with them. Kind of like what liberals are apparently, I guess what liberals do with getting people to use nuclear energy, trying to keep people from using nuclear energy. And I bet you if there was a game that had a conservative theme to it like this, and told people, hey, it's wrong to be gay and stuff like that, I bet you they wouldn't have a problem with it. In fact, they would be endorsing it. Heck, if there was a game like that, MSNBC might be complaining about it, and if they would, I'd be complaining about them, if there's there probably are games like that out there that say that homosexuality is wrong. There are games out there. I know there's games out there like that. I mean, you won't find them on your consoles, but internet-based games and stuff like that. And I bet you anything else, MSNBC would be complaining about, saying this game pushes a conservative. They'd be saying all the same things Fox News is saying, and I would be ranting about them and not Fox News. So, like I said, this argument goes both ways. To me, this is just a big liberal versus conservative thing. It just is really, really retarded. But, whatever. Continue.
Well, actually, I take the other one. There's one out there where you're in charge of the World Environmental Organization, and it's called Fate of the World.
Right.
So you get here, Timmy. Here, you're 5. Here, play Fate of the World, and we'll all be on your shoulders, son.
Here's what the game designers have to say about this. This is Ian Roberts. He's a game designer, and he's defending these games. He says, video games are about real-world issues, and they're important much like films. They let us experience things we never could and help us understand ourselves, each other, and the world around us, which sounds like a fine defense of it, but at the end of the day, parents don't really know what's in these video games, so they send them to play Sim City, and they're learning these lessons that might not be something the parents want with their kids to learn.
Exactly, and again, I go back to the fear. Here, there's actually one here. It's McDonald's the game, and it tells a kid, listen, hey, there's a whole lot more to the story behind your hamburger. You have to think about deforestation, the slaughter. That's in the word slaughter is right there on the opening page of McDonald's the game, an evil corporation.
Now, this is basically another ignorance of Fox News. Now, there is a genre of games out there that are known as serious games. And serious games are games that are not meant to be fun. They're meant to be more thought-provoking. Serious games are games that are used to help create problem-solving, understandings about certain subject matters, and help give you learning experiences about different types of values. That's serious games. And the kind of games that he was talking about, which is the McDonald's game and the Fate of the World, those are serious games. I'm very familiar with the McDonald's game, and I'll talk about that one in a minute. But that's pretty much that's pretty much that's the kind of games they're talking about. They're serious games. They're meant to be more thought-provoking, like I said. They're not meant to be taken seriously. And this is just ignorance of Fox News and understanding how video games work. They think all video games are meant to be fun, and they also, I guess, think by the report that all video games are for kids. And it's interesting, this is the same guy who was in the Medal of Honor report last year, and he even said that he looked up and said, I know for a fact that most gamers are adults. So I don't see why I don't think he's going back to that, but by the way he says it, the way he's wording it, does feel like he's going back towards, video games are for kids thing. I don't know. Or maybe they're saying, well, what if kids get their hands on these games? That one makes more sense to me, but even still, it's still stupid. Because, serious games are usually not meant to be, they're not like, I would say that serious games aren't inappropriate for kids, but they are involving subject matters that usually most kids wouldn't be involved in. Or I should say, they're not the kind of games that kids would be interested in playing. Kids aren't going to play a game worrying about taking care of the environment. They want to play games where you destroy the environment. See what I mean? Now, back to the topic of this McDonald's game. The McDonald's game and its creator, who is this Italian guy who I can't pronounce his name because I suck at pronunciation, which you probably could tell by watching some of my videos and this video in general that I'm probably pronouncing some words wrong because I suck. But I'm not here to please you or be perfect. But there's a documentary out that came out a couple years ago called Playing Columbine, and it was a documentary about video game controversy done by Danny Ladone, who was the guy who did the Playing Columbine game. I'm sorry, the Columbine game, that RPG that was made, that really controversial one. And he did a whole documentary about the game and video game controversy in general. And it was a really good documentary. I recommend any gamers out there, you guys should go see it. It's a really good one. Basically, he actually interviewed the guy who made that McDonald's game in his documentary, and he even talked about it. And what I want to show you is a clip where he talks about his McDonald's game, because I would like to talk about this McDonald's game, but I think the guy who made it himself could talk about it more than I could because, well, he made the game. So here's a clip from the documentary to show you guys exactly what this guy was doing.
L'idea era quella di esprimere una critica complessiva dell'industria del fast food, praticamente ricomponendo i vari settori, le varie parti di questo processo disperso globalmente, quindi dal pascolo all'allevamento, alla vendita, diciamo, del fast food. Non eravamo particolarmente soddisfatti della solita critica che si usa fare all'industria, alla corporation McDonald's, cioè il fatto di vendere cibo scadente, di vendere cibo insalubre.
So yeah, pretty interesting stuff. So that pretty much wraps up that little area right there about the McDonald's game. Now the next thing I want to talk about before I continue on is, if parents don't want their kids learning about certain subject matters or the different values in some of these serious games, that's fine, but if you don't want them learning about these certain values because you don't agree with them, and you don't want your children to agree with them, then you teach them, like, hey, what these guys are teaching you is wrong. What I'm teaching you is right. I mean, you bring your kids up, the way you should. Raise your kids. Pretty much, there you go. And, also monitor them on what they do. It's up to you to monitor your kids on what games you play. Like, you should know what games you're buying for your kids and what's in them. If you're not going to teach your kids what values you think they need to learn and monitor them on what games they're playing, then you're not doing your job as a parent, and you can't blame the games. If you think this game is pushing a liberal agenda and you don't want your kids to learn about liberals because you think liberals are bad and immoral, you can't go around and blame the game saying this game is indoctrinating kids with liberal, because it's not. This game is not, at least this Sim Society game is not, even if it does have a liberal theme to it, like I said, I really don't know because I don't know a lot about liberals and I don't know a lot about this game in general. Games don't endorse or encourage anything, or don't promote anything, which is all the same word. They're all acronyms, or synonyms, whatever the word is, for words that mean the same thing. I suck, like I said. it's still your job as a parent to monitor what your kids do and teach them the values that you want them to learn. I may not agree with those values, and a lot of times in the case of conservatives, I probably wouldn't, because I don't like parents that teach their kids that being gay is wrong, because if they themselves turn out to be gay, it's going to cause a lot of problems, but I'm not here to talk about that. Maybe some other time when I feel like opening a can of whoop ass on conservatives, but although I'm kind of doing it right now, but I'm more or less complaining about Fox News, not conservatives. But it's just, I mean, it's parenting. That's what I talked about in my last video, and that's what a lot of other people have talked about on YouTube about this subject matter. It's all about parenting. But hey, parents that want to do their jobs can't blame the games. Let's finish this up.
But are people taking this too far and say that this is liberal fear-mongering or indoctrination somehow? You know, that's what some critics on the right are saying about these games.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Because, again, this kind of comes back to a theme, let kids be kids. It's one thing, like where Sesame Street, will teach you not to litter and teach you how to, say hello and please and thank you. And these kinds of things, of course. But, but they do it through nice, charming, fuzzy little puppets. These guys actually have kids freaking out and with sweaty palms worried that they're not going to kill a bunch of virtual, polar bears.
Virtual polar
bears.
I can see both sides of this debate. I see all sides of this because some people writing me this morning saying, well, this is better perhaps than teaching the kids how to play war games. So.
It's also boring. These are not games. There's a game that it teaches kids how to do a tag sale.
TJ, what's boring about building pipelines? I don't get it.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. I really don't have that much to say. I mean, Fox News pretty much is just repeating themselves. They're saying we don't like this game because of its somewhat liberal agenda, and they basically talk about how serious games are not meant. These games are not meant to be fun. But so Fox News doesn't like these games because of their liberal agenda. Fine. I already said everything I need to say before, so I don't need to repeat myself. And basically talks about, oh, these games aren't very fun. They're just boring. Well, like I said, serious games are not meant to be fun. They're meant to be thought-provoking and problem-solving. It's, once again, your guys' misunderstanding and ignorance of the video game world and how games work. These particular games are not meant to be fun. They're meant to be, like I said, thought-provoking and problem-solving. I have to keep repeating myself because, and I kind of don't want to, but when it comes to Fox News, I feel that I have to. In fact, I feel like some of the same things I said in this rant are the same things I said in my my last rant, and the rant before that, and pretty much every other rant on YouTube that's been about a gamer complaining about Fox News bitching about video games. But you know what? I'm done. Fox News, fuck you. This is AC signing off.